Greetings from Brother Stappen. I'm a disciple and witness of Jesus Christ, to all the inhabitants of the earth. I present to you as a witness the gospel of the kingdom. In this lesson today, still titled The First Day When Elohim Created Light, we're going to be going over Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. And again, we'll just read my updated translation of Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 first. And then we're going to start again with verse 3. It says, the plan was Rasheth, so created Elohim and earth, created Elohim and eighth, the heavens and the earth, when the planet was a glob of water, it had no soil or life, and was in total darkness. And by the breath of Elohim, the glob became a globe, and Elohim said, let there be a galaxy, a weapon of mass destruction. And a galaxy appeared. Now we're going to start this lesson back off with verse 3. And this time we're just going to do something a little different with verse 3. We're going to go look up that word light in the Hebrew concordance. And I already have that number pulled up for you, which is Hebrew reference number 216. Now when you go to that Hebrew reference number 216, this is the Hebrew word, and it is pronounced or. And when you take the Hebrew word, you would normally read Hebrew from right to left. I just put it to left to right for your convenience, and then translate it back to the ancient Hebrew. It literally means God crucified son. This is the definition of the word or, which the Bible translates into light in the Bible. And in other words, the definition of light and the definition of or does not mean the same thing. Light is just a small description of what or means. This word or means God crucified son. And now we're just going to go over a few scriptures to verify that translation of the ancient Hebrew. When you go to John chapter 8 verses 12, it says, then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He says, I'm the or. He that follow me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. John 9 and 5, as long as I am in the world, I am the light. I'm the or. I'm God's crucified son. John 12 and 46, this is Christ speaking again. I am come a light in the world, that whosoever believe on me shall not abide in darkness. Matthew 14:6. The people which sat in darkness saw great light, and to them which sat in the region and shadows of death, light is sprung up. John 3:19 says, and this is the condemnation. The light, which is God crucified son, is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is go over a demonstration of how the light that Elohim created represents God's crucified son. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these three constellations mainly, and probably even the bull, but we're going to take the constellation Ram, Pisces, and Aquarius and show you how these represents Christ. So first, I have this little chart. Again, this represents the age of the Ram, the age of Pisces, which is the current age we're in, and the age of Aquarius. Now, an astrological age is approximately 2,160 years. And the reason we say approximately 2,160 years, because we don't know. Some ages might be a little longer, some might be a little shorter, and especially with the expanding of the galaxy, this could change exactly how many years, but we know approximately 2,160 years. Now, basically what I have here, the age of the ram is the previous age the world was in. In other words, the world traveled through the age of ram, then it traveled through the age of Pisces, then through the age of Aquarius. We're currently in the age of Pisces. Now, the age of Pisces was from about 2000 BC, that means before Christ, to 1 BC, until Christ came on the scene. This was pretty much from Abraham to Christ, and this is the Old Testament. Now, the current age we're in began pretty much when Christ was born, and it ends when Christ returns. And this is the New Testament. And the next age to come that we're about to enter is the age of Pisces. And in the age of Pisces, there will be time no longer, it will be eternity, and we will have a new heaven and a new earth. So the first thing we're going to do is show you how the constellation Ram represents Christ. Now, the first thing I have for you here, I just went to Blue Letter Bible and I did a word search for Ram. And as you can see, the word rams occurs 97 times in 86 verses in the King James Version. And it's only from Genesis to Numbers. So that means the word ram does not appear one time in New Testament scripture. So, and then I just have here a couple verses for you that we're going to read with the word ram in there so you can see how they represent Christ. It says, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a tucket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. So a ram is a burnt offering, and it represents Christ being devoured. Exodus 29:15 says, ye shall also take one ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram, and thou shalt slay the ram, and ye shall take his blood and sprinkle it around about upon the altar. And this is only a couple verses. I'm not going to go over all the verses in the Old Testament about ram, but basically Christ represents that ram that they have to kill or devour and for a sin offering. I'm saying that a little wrong. As an offering for sacrifice for their sins. So again, I'm just being real brief here. Now, one of the things I want to point out before I get to the current age we indicate, the age of Pisces. If you go to Exodus 32 verses 1 through 6, and we'll just read this really quick. It says, and when the people saw Moshe delayed to come down out of the mountain, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moshe, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we know not what is become of him. And Aaron said unto them, break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. And all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with a graven tool, after he had made it a molten calf. So he made a golden molten calf. And they said, these be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Now the reason I have that verse there is because the reason they're making a golden calf, and we'll just scroll back up here to the map of the galaxy, before the age of Ram was the age of the bull or calf. So in that age before Abraham, the bull would have represented God, and that is why they was making a bull. But But they didn't understand the age of the bull was done away with, and they had entered into the age of the ram. And that is why, again, you read these verses in the Old Testament um, where a ram is always referred to as an animal being sacrificed for sins. So now we're kind of done explaining the age of the ram. Now we're going to jump to the current age we're in, which is the age of Pisces, which the zodiac sign kind of represents two fish. The first thing I'm going to do is, because I mentioned it's from 1 AD to approximately 2160 AD, and I said it is from the time of Christ's first coming to the time of his second coming. The first thing I'm going to do is just prove that with scripture real quick, and then we'll get into how Pisces represent Christ in the New Testament. When you go to Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, it says, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled." And basically, what that is in response to, verse 34, is the disciples asking Christ, "What shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world?" This word generations means age. He's not saying he's not saying by the end of your generation, as when you and your children die, all these things shall be fulfilled. He's saying by the end of the age, before they exit the age of Pisces, all these things shall be fulfilled. So Christ is going to come back before this age is over. And now we get into how fish represents and correlates to the Bible. We start off with Matthew chapter 4, verse 18. It says, "And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brethren, Simon and Peter, or Simon and Petros, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers." So you got two people. Christ is going, and they're fishers or fishermen. So again, this kind of represents that astrological fish, like catching fish. And then Matthew chapter 4, verse 19, "And he said unto them, Follow me, and I will make you fisher of men." So Christ was a fisher of men. His disciples was fishers of men. Everybody in this age supposed to be fishers of men, learning the truth and then going out, catching men, teaching them the truth, converting them to disciples, and teaching them to go forth and spread the gospel. So again, that's why the age of Pisces represents the current age we're in, because we're all supposed to be fishers of men. Now, just like when we read about the age of the ram, and we kind of went back to show that there's scriptures in the Old Testament that points back to the age of the calf or the age of the bull. Well, New Testament does the same thing. There are scriptures that point to the age of Aquarius, which is the age we're about to enter in, and we're going to read those scriptures. When you go to Mark 14 and 13, it says, "And he sendeth forth two of his disciples, and saith unto them, Go ye into the city, and there shall you meet you a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him." And then Luke 22 and 10, "And he said unto them, Behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall a man meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entered in." And again, the age of Aquarius is a man carrying a pitcher of water, but pouring that water out. Now, why is he pouring that water out? We're just going to go to read a few more scriptures. When you go to Acts 2 and 17, it says, "And it shall come to pass in the last days, said God, I will pour out my spirit." That water represents his spirit, "upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And on my servants and on my handmaids I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy." And then when you go to Isaiah 11 and 9, it says, "They shall no hurt nor destroy in my holy mountain." This takes place in the age of Pisces. After this, the age of Aquarius after the age of Pisces. They shall no hurt nor destroy in my holy mountain. It says, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of Jehovah, or Jesus, as the waters cover the sea. So again, the age of Aquarius represents the knowledge of God being poured out on the whole world. In other words, this is like a era of great deception. It's called the great falling away. This is the era of truth. No more deception, no more lies. God is coming back, and he's renewing the heavens and the earth and fulfilling the promise he made to Abraham and his seed. So what I have here, astrology does not prove Christ does not exist. According to the Bible, it proves he does exist. A lot of people try to use astrology and say the Bible is actually all astrological, and they're right. And this is in the Bible. It does not contradict the Bible. The Bible talks about an astrology and how astrology represents the characteristics of Christ and God. So with that being said, we're going to hit back Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 to 5. Again, the plan was Rasheth. So created Elohim and Ate, the heavens and the earth. When the planet was a glob of water, it had no soil or life, and was in total darkness. And by the breath of Elohim, the glob became a globe. And Elohim said, let there be a galaxy. And again, that galaxy is also a weapon of mass destruction. And there was a galaxy. Verse 4 says, and Elohim saw the galaxy, that it was good, and Elohim divided the light from the darkness. Now, what does it mean, Elohim divided the light from the darkness? He's talking about dividing the light from the darkness on the planet, on that globe. Half of it was light, half of it was dark. Now, most people say, well, where does the light come from? Why is half of it light and half of it dark? And I'm going to show you why. And what does it mean when I say, and he divided the light from the darkness? When you go back to this calendar, or basically this map of our galaxy, this is the light. The constellations is what gives light. There's no stars here. Now, the planet, the side of the planet, the half of the planet, this red line represents the rotation of the earth. Now, this half of the planet that faces the stars, faces these zodiac signs, is the half of the planet that is light because it faces the signs. The half that is dark is the ones that pretty much still faces away from the constellations as it rotates through the Mazarah, or the chambers of the south. So again, that's what it means when it says he divided the light from the darkness. The half of the planet is light, half of it is dark. The light half is the half that is facing the constellations. The dark side is the half that is facing away from the constellations. So now we go back at verse 5. It says, and he called the light day. Now when he say he called the light day, this is referring to on the planet. When the planet has light from the constellations, he calls it day. And the darkness on the planet he called night. This is referring to the planet. Half day, half night. And it says, and the evening represents like 12 o'clock a.m. and the morning, which kind of represents 11:59 p.m. or in other words, a 24-hour period was the first day. This happened in a 24-hour period. And that's the main point I want to get across there. The evening and the morning was a 24-hour period. So in closing, with this lesson, I just want to again remind people, day is referring to the side of the planet that faces the constellations. Night is referring to the side of the planet that faces away from the constellations. And with that being said, this concludes this gospel.